prescriptions, especially related to pain medications. I guess that I would like to hear your response to the follow-up from that. So if you monitor somebody and determine that they indeed have this is drug seeking, what then? How do you determine that somebody's drug seeking and not chronic pain? I mean, how are you going to use that piece of legislation or the plan to address substance abuse? This is probably well, I was just looking at you, Bill, but you go first if you want.
Well, I think you have to work with the physicians. I think it's a medical problem. And who knows, was Rush Limbaugh an addict, or was he an abuser? We don't know. I think these are medical questions. And I think what we have to do, and I know that there was a bill this last session, and I know before it got amended, there was support for it in the medical community, and I think that's what you have to do. I think you have to work with the medical community, because that's where it all starts with these prescription drugs. And I think we have to be a little bit careful of how quickly we want to have search warrants, and we want to go arrest doctors and do all that sort of thing in order to stop the abuse. I don't think there's any question that there is some abuse out there, and we have to get a handle on it. I think there's a way to do it, and I think the way you do it is you sit down with the medical community, and we come together, and we find a bill that's going to work for them, that protects people's privacy rights, and is not overly aggressive in terms of punishing the medical community.
It's an interesting issue, and the newspapers give us all a chance to have one substantive article, which I really got to appreciate that in the whole statewide race. And I ended up doing it on this issue just because when I started hearing about the stats, and that's not discounting amphetamines, but 8 people had deaths directly attributable to meth last year, 140 of the top 4 prescription pain relievers. We're 3rd per capita in the country for adolescent abuse. And this is the new, at least what some law enforcement says, and I've worked with some of them both in my private legal work. I represent the Police Protective Association and others. They're saying this is what we're seeing out there. And maybe we didn't always see it before because we'd go in and say, do you have any meth? Notwithstanding the fact you might be holding a bag of oxycodone. So that this is really what's out there. The issue then really is, and I appreciate that, where do you go with it? Because in large measure, it's a public health issue. I mean, this is an addiction issue, but it's also a law enforcement issue. Because if 10% of our kids are now abusing these things and using them not necessarily all recreationally, we got a problem. Now, where do you find the balance? 36 states have a prescription monitoring program already. 10 states have doctor shopping monitoring. That doesn't abuse the doctor. That's the person who's going pill seeking. And I think that you end up, the balance isn't there yet. There's right now Board of Crime Control, and I've been in on one of their sessions, and I can give you the name of the person to call if you want to get in on it right now, because they're trying to bring, the Board of Pharmacy's there, the pain people are there, the American Cancer Society is there, and they're saying completely, this is a public health issue. There's got to be some avenues for law enforcement, I think, to be able to, as long as there's some probable cause or something, to be able to get some of that information, to really get, I'm not saying the addict as much as the person that's selling it to the addict. And that balance isn't there. Right now they're looking at it just as a public health issue, and you'd essentially have to have everything you would have to convict somebody anyway before you ever get access to that monitoring program. So I think we can look at, there's different standards around the country. One, that law enforcement has wide open use of it. I don't think that's a good idea at all. And I don't think you should necessarily completely seal it off from law enforcement either. You need a fairly high standard before you do it. And I I agree with Mike that, you know, if the medical community doesn't buy into this, and that was the one group that was missing at this meeting, was MMA. Yeah, there were a couple of Dr. Easterman and things, but if the medical community doesn't buy into it, you'll never get it. One of the things that they're looking at is prescription monitoring program, not just for the Schedule I drugs, but for every prescription, because they think then that the medical community is more apt to buy into that. Because there's also, I mean, one of the things apparently that a doctor would like to know is, okay, I prescribed this, ultimately, did they ever take it? And then you can do a lot more. But for the most part, what this sort of system would be is it's allowing pharmacists to check up, and before I fill in this script, say, okay, this guy has 6 scripts from 3 doctors. Either that means, which could well mean, he or she's in a heck of a lot of pain, or that means that he or she's pill seeking, and I'm not going to fill this prescription.
Teresa, I think that the registry can have a very positive effect in terms of preventing people from getting into the criminal problems that arise with prescription drug abuse. Because I think once people have that firm sense they'll be caught, it really does have a chilling effect on it. And in the cases that I've handled, for those of you who don't know, there's a felony statute, fraudulently obtaining prescription drugs. The cases that I've had, and I have not had very many of these. I think they're starting to grow in number. But the ones that I've had haven't really dealt with an individual using too much of their prescription, exceeding the dose amount for pain management, as much as fraudulently obtaining a drug with a script that belongs to another person, or obtaining an excess amount of their own prescription and vending it to others to make money. Those tend to be the cases where law enforcement gets involved, trying to get a handle on the situation. Now, something that's important to point out is the sanctions that judges tend to impose for those kind of cases are very remedial in nature. They're almost always probationary sentences with a requirement of treatment. And a very promising area we talked about a little bit earlier is drug treatment courts. Judges don't want to lock up this category of an offender. They want to get them treated. They want to get them, and I'm speaking of broad generalization, that's the nature of the cases that I sit through week after week after week, so I claim some knowledge in that area. But again, I think that having a registry can have a chilling effect on the conduct, and hopefully it will have a dramatic effect of reducing the overdose problem in the records service.
Thank you. I apologize, but that's totally a different start.